Hello and welcome to Autistic Radio. Spectrum Voices Conversation is sponsored by coldpack.co.uk for practitioners who want to use advertising on their cold packs and make sure that their customers keep coming back. If you're an end user needing a cold pack, when you use coldpack.co.uk to get your cold pack, here at Autistic Radio and Autistic Association, we receive everything that you donate for that cold pack to be sent to you. And now it's time. It's show time. Harry, take us away for the 555.
Hello everyone, this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 23rd of November 2025, and this is where we discuss the recent posts on Autistic Radio Facebook page. And the first post today is from the Actually Autistic Coach, who's a personal coach who empowers my fellow autistic people by working to uncover and unmask revealing our best selves. And they shared the following, quote, "Autistic liberation isn't about being palatable. It's about refusing to contort ourselves into shapes that makes everyone else's life easier while destroying our own." What's people's thoughts on that? A strong one to start with.
I have a feeling that people are waiting for me to say something because this is very much my topic, isn't it? I have found that saying no is often the most powerful tool that we have in our toolbox when we're autistic. Not to be obstructive, not to be demand avoidance, but to not accept the poor practice or things that do not fit that are intended to give us opportunities but don't. If we don't say no to things, then how can we get them changed? Maybe that's part of what the post is on about.
Yes, I agree. The thing about messages like this, quotes like this, words like this, is feeling to say it to yourself a lot of the time. Because you feel like society, other people are making you feel like a nuisance if you sometimes have the courage to say no, to say that something you're not adaptable to what they're asking you to do, anything like being sociable, going into work somewhere, it's, and the way they look at it is you're just not being normal, you're just being a nuisance, a pest, and you should just get over yourself and just go on with life like everybody else does, which is an absolutely nonsensical thing to say, because everybody else, what does that actually mean? But if you're stuck in a trap where you feel you've been undermined or not been taken seriously, those sort of words do haunt you, and it does take a lot of courage from yourself, from speaking with others that feel or share the same experiences as you, to do that. And it's just very important for these kind of messages to be shared time and time again.
All my so-called support was about making me compliant. It just left me traumatized.
Another post, it's like being forced to do something is a traumatic experience, but you're being made to feel like you're the problem, which is, I find, totally unacceptable. I know there's a bit of give and take for a lot of things, but sometimes it just seems like for many people it's bullying, it's about power, and it's about that word that Robbie uses a lot, being compliant. And it's just wrong, because it doesn't help. If you're more inclusive and more flexible and adaptable, a lot of people would be a bit more involved in things, and it'd certainly be a better society than we live in just now.
The opportunities are always about fulfilling someone else's outcome, never about giving me the life that I want or working towards what I need. It was all about them, just compliant.
The next post is from Grove, online community for autistic young people, which is an education website. Autistic-led support for young people, one-to-one mentoring and peer groups. One-to-one mentoring and peer groups, authentic connection and self-understanding in safe spaces. Being me, exploring and embracing autistic identity. Grove helps young people feel accepted and celebrated just as they are. And they shared the following. They've shared an information picture collection talking about what they're all about. And I'll read the text at the bottom. One-to-one autistic mentoring. One-to-one autistic to autistic mentoring. There are lots of mentoring options available for autistic young people, and families often come across gaming-based services first, and this can be a great fit for many. At Grove, we game as well, but our foundations and approach offer something a little different, and were worth considering alongside the rest, being small in comparison. Our one-to-one mentoring is led by autistic adults with deep knowledge, lived experience and specialist training. We work flexibly and commit fully to Grove's neuro-affirming foundations, and you can read these on our website. We adapt to each other's young person's needs, interest, communication style and sense of safety. Our mentors facilitate a huge range of activities, and through those authentic connections, young people can feel understood, seen and heard in a way many only experience with other autistic people. It's mentoring that supports self-understanding, identity and real-world well-being. And while being autistic gives meaningful foundation, truly supporting a young person's autistic experience requires mentors who are deeply knowledgeable and genuinely affirming. Without that, misunderstandings and unintentional harm can occur. We are a small, carefully selected team. Every mentor goes through a thorough interview exploring their knowledge of autism, PDA and neuro-affirming practice, and all hold an enhanced DBS with Children's Bard List check. Sessions are monitored and supported by Grove's founder, Jess, ME Autism Distinction. Mentors are not left to work in isolation. We operate as a connected team, continually learning and sharing insights. In fact, autism is a shared special interest, and it shows in how we work. We take time to match each young person with the right mentor, considering interests, energy and personality. Because you know your child best, and fit matters. We ask you about triggers, about trauma, your hopes and aims. We want to know as much as we can about your child, and we'll be honest if we feel we are not the right people to support. When choosing mentoring support, take a look at what we offer. It might be exactly what your young person needs. It's online only, worldwide, and we have space for new young people. What's Phil's thoughts on this?
I can see Robbie in the text immediately says that something like this is needed for adults, and I agree. You know, that's kind of the space we're in here at Autistic Radio, with the 444, for instance, the drop-in group. What I like about this is it's a group of people who have professionalised, and they've professionalised from an autistic background. It says that the majority of the people involved are autistic. The mentors are autistic. It might even be the whole group is autistic. And if you're closer to the autism experience, surely that's the mentor that is most effective. That's the mentor you would choose, somebody who is actually autistic.
I was thinking that if you read between the lines a little bit too, it's not just that they consult the parent about the child's goals, but by having an autistic mentor, I think they would go about getting at the child's goals too. I would hope so.
I think what you're saying there is that mentoring in this case is also advocacy. So if it's an autistic person who is the professional, they're also advocating for the autistic person with the empathy that they have with the shared neurotype back through to the parents and to the other professionals involved. So somebody is getting more than just mentoring. They're getting advocacy back and explanation.
And Rob in the text is saying that support should always be based on lived experience of autistic people in this instance. And I'm thinking about it myself, how great it would have been if I had that in school. Of course, wasn't diagnosed until just after I left school, but a mentor, someone to talk to. And even though I sort of did have that in a way, but it'd been great if there was that understanding that was there at the time, and to talk about certain things, to be assisted, mentored, of course. And it's great to know that this is available for people. And the online thing as well, because the online world, has been said before, and gaming is being looked upon as a bad thing. It's looked upon as you're not being social enough, you're not being active enough in the community, which we know is nonsense because there's an online community, we're one of them. So it's good to know that these things exist and it can help people, and they speak to autistic people that use it rather than it being referred to by carers or parents, even though that is very important too. But it has to be a team effort that way, depending on the circumstances.
Harry, just before the 444, the drop-in, and obviously this live broadcast, I made a recording with Dan Evans. Dan is a young person who has created his own mentoring through a podcast, the Danifesto. It's just started, but he's already got 2 episodes out there. So if people find the Danifesto and point any young people in their direction or people in education, I think that's something to watch.
Yeah, I listened to his first episode. It was really good. Good interview. I didn't realise he was on before us because I thought there'd been a cancellation, but I'll let us proceed with today's affairs.
The next post is from the autistic teacher. Who's a public figure, autistic and proud, sharing insight and understanding to help the autistic community, based in the UK. And they've shared a presentation on something called strewing. And I'll just go through some of it just now to start the conversation. When my husband mentioned the word strewing, I thought he had made it up. But no, there is actually a word for what we often do. Strewing is the act of subtly introducing new experiences and materials into the environment without any pressure or expectation. It's about offering a silent conversation to explore the world in one's own time and space. What's people's thoughts on that? Anyone ever heard of it?
Yeah, this is when we all go quiet because we're all looking at it and people are saying in the text that they've never heard the term strewing. What does it mean?
As long as it's not misconstruing. The act of subtly introducing new experiences and materials into the environment without any pressure or expectation. So, which environment are we talking about, and what kind of pressures and expectations?
I'll continue with the presentation that explains a bit more. It's a concept that works well with the natural curiosity of our children, particularly those with pathological demand avoidance (PDA) tendencies, as it reduces the stress of demands and expectations. What strewing looks like. Strewing takes many forms, and it often requires a delicate balance of effort and patience. We use strewing in school, in our artistic community groups, and at home. This will often mean leaving activities out that you hope will spark an interest. The silent setup. Sometimes we set up a small activity or place an interesting object in sight and then simply step back. The idea is to allow the child to notice and hopefully gravitate towards it organically. It's about creating an atmosphere where curiosity can blossom without the weight of expectation. Sharing my own interest. Occasionally I'll share something I personally enjoy about an activity or an object. It's less about selling the idea and more about sharing a part of myself. It's amazing how enthusiasm can be contagious without it being enforced. Active engagement. I sometimes begin engaging with the activity myself, modelling enjoyment and presence. This can sometimes spark interest purely through observation. It's about being present and interested without placing the spotlight on them. Collaborative exploration. Getting involved often adds another layer of connection. There's something inviting about a shared experience, especially if it's approached with an open heart and mind. Strewing requires a gentle embrace of patience and acceptance. There are days when the interest just isn't there, and that's okay. It's a reminder to myself that the journey is as vital as the experience. If something doesn't engage them today, it might tomorrow. Or maybe a discovery wasn't meant to happen with that particular object or activity at all. It's not about pushing an agenda, it's about providing opportunities for self-directed discovery when they're ready. What's people's thoughts on that full explanation?
So the word strewing we can remember because you strew the floor with different toys and let the kid pick up what they want rather than directing their attention. And it's about not directing the interest but offering the opportunity so people can, or in this case children, can find it. That seems like the right way to go around things to me.
Yes, the more I read into that, the more it made sense. Because a lot of society, particularly in schools and other places, it's like people, like many autistic people who are sitting, quiet or just quietly kind of trying to just fit into the environment they're in, just sitting down, taking their time to get used to the room and that they're in, and things like that. The thing that happens is things feel forced upon you, like topics, like subjects, and it's like you're forced to enjoy them as well. It's like, come on, don't sit like that all silent, come on, join in, that sort of thing. But if you put things out and then give people time to take part if they want to, that's how learning can happen. And that's how, and that sort of learning and that sort of non-enforced sort of approach, people can learn so much and even enjoy it. I think the whole thing about education in many ways, or learning new things, even if learning new trades and stuff, it's all forced and it's all pressured. And that doesn't work for many autistic minds, especially children.
It is exactly the opposite of what the so-called support of as an adult. Everything has been forced, and that is what's been the problem. Same with when I was at school. Everything was forced.
I think we have to appreciate that over time that has changed. Maybe not enough, and it's only now that we're beginning to see this as an option. Um, but it's taken a while for people to figure out what was actually going wrong with normative kind of education, say, or upbringing. Um, so I'll give it that just now. And then to expand on what I put in the text, um, my initial response was this provides affordance and availability in an open process. So what that means is what Joe said about strewing things around. I'd heard about this in some other online discussion and in some meetings I was in as well, that you don't go in what's seen as a declarative kind of gesture, if we understand declarative language, which is like sort of forcing people and saying this is the way it's done. You create a space where things are just available and it's at the time and space, or the, what's the word I'm looking for, the intention of the individual, the neurodivergent individual, to make any kind of move or to be active, not to be forced into it. So that's what that bit meant. And I think this connects with the previous post on mentoring, because all the way through that post I was thinking, we need this kind of novel new space, which is what strewing, I think, is implying. So, and that explains what I meant by non-declarative. If you remember the discussions we had about declarative language, and changing that into a more helpful kind of language where people have choice, say. I'll leave it at that.
When I've seen autism professionals in videos who are there to enable autistic children, it feels very often that they are directing rather than strewing. And I think that's linked to why there's so much antipathy towards behaviourism, because many of the professionals who use behaviourism as a background to their learning direct, and this is the opposite of directing. So maybe there's a cultural difference there that people in other countries, particularly in North America, might see that this is different, what is being said here, to what they experience.
I often feel that this kind of improvisation is frowned upon or rejected because it's seen as non-productive. It doesn't meet targets and goals, and it's kind of wasting time and money to some.
Yeah, that definitely is a problem with how society is. It's all about somebody else's targets, and these targets are based upon budgets that are being spent on particular things. So they don't want to waste money in their heads for individualism and out the box sort of thinking because it doesn't suit that particular agenda. And that's a shame. But at least people are trying and trying to get that message across. And in many ways, for the people that are worrying about the budgets, etc., this might help save money in the long run if that's what that sort of attitude is. But it's just the way the targets and that are all set up. It's not rigid, it's not flexible, and it's actually hurting people. And that's even beyond autism itself, but particularly autism. Jesus, you want to speak?
Yeah, I was just going to say some of what you were noting about this would take longer, and so maybe it's pessimistic of me, but I could see people, professionals, attempting this approach, strewing, and then somehow subtly uh, influencing and forcing it. But for the most part, it's a big improvement.
Imagine a community of people who really enjoyed going to school, found themselves from a very early age, were actively engaged in what they want, what they are, what they want to be. They'd be coming back and funding the place. It would be a self-generating kind of community. It would be wonderful. But, we go down other roads, don't we?
Well, it does remind me of sort of some private education for young children, like Montessori, or I can't remember a couple of the other names, but even if it starts in places that are more private and works its way into the mainstream, it could still only be better.
Robbie came up with a good point in text. I struggled at school, but had no problem learning when went to college. And I recall that, not my experience, but being at college and seeing the approach, what college was like just after leaving school, and the attitude and the openness, and basically if you were taking the piss as well, they'd kind of set you straight. And that's the sort of thing that we need. But school was all about, as Robbie says, about doing as you're told. But going to college is more open, and learning feels much more fulfilling. And many people that have been to college and went to college at the time I was there was talking about how school was such a horrible environment. And it's good to be in an environment where learning can be enjoyed, especially when it's done more flexibly than it would be in so-called normal education.
I used to have a mad theory that people shouldn't really be at school between the ages of maybe 9 or 10 and 16. They should be in some kind of practical activities, technical activities even. And then when they feel the urge or the desire to utilise education, go into further education.
I think if you've got some sort of ambition or dream that you want to fulfill, it's sometimes hard to marry that to what you're learning when you're at school, because history, I love history, but I don't think it's ever really come into any of the jobs that I've had.
I feel like history would make you better at everything.
There used to be really strong debates when I was at school about how rubbish history actually was, because what they taught you was, very much conditioned, very much a given narrative. There was stuff missing all over the place. They didn't teach you how to be historical.
Well, that's very true. I mean, I enjoyed history in school, but of course, they've got to be careful, they'll think, with how they teach you history, because of how history is, what side you're on, what's the political narrative, and that sort of thing. But it was interesting. But the weird thing is, I didn't really learn much from history in school as such. A lot of stuff that was said in school I kind of knew already from home, because my dad likes his history. And he gives his own narrative on it, and he says, well, in school they won't tell you this and they won't tell you that, and he gives his own. There's just bits and pieces. Like in school, you're talking, it's the thing about good guys and bad guys sort of attitude, and obviously history isn't like that, life isn't like that, but they sort of kind of teach, I suppose they teach all subjects in that sort of way. It's quite interesting when you kind of delve deep into it, especially with my artistic mind, it likes to kind of ask why is the way things are the way they are. But it was, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't the greatest. It wasn't my favourite subject at school. I prefer geography.
Isn't that a thing that the child that constantly asks why is seen as a pain, is like bothersome, and is very much clamped down upon and, conditioned to stop being like that? I think we've all experienced that, where we're just an endless why.
I wanted to do 14 and I wanted to do woodwork or metalwork, and I was called in and I was told I couldn't do woodwork or metalwork because I was the sort of person that would never have a job that involved practical skills. And some of the people that weren't doing so well academic subjects would need those skills. So I didn't do woodwork and metalwork. And 3 years later, I was in a builder's merchant's yard, and 4 years after that, I was working in the building industry on the tools. So woodwork and metalwork would have been useful, and that's with maths, Ray. Knowing how to deal with your money is important, and in that particular job, knowing sizes and angles and everything else was an important part of the job.
I agree, but when you're a child, it's very hard to get that. They don't teach you why that matters, really. They just expect you to be good at the subject or develop a talent for it. But I'd always associated arithmetic with calculating money. I know what you mean about angles and formulas, yeah.
I mean, I was terrible at maths, but by the time, like when I went to the builders merchants, I had to learn imperial and metric measurements, so I could convert them in my head, and then I could look at something and tell you how big it was, how long it was, what sort of wood, what the size of the wood was. I mean, that was really good for that sort of job.
The next post is from Artistic Flair, which is a community page. Artistic Flair is an online community and resource hub dedicated to amplifying artistic voices to change perceptions of autism to create a more inclusive society. And they shared the following. Autistic people aren't trying to make excuses, and we're not hiding behind our autism diagnoses. We are finally learning why life has been so difficult. And the example they provided in the shared picture. Autistic B. Autism finally explains why jobs have evolved. Autistic me. Autism finally explained why jobs have always been so hard for me. Them. Don't use autism as an excuse. Everyone struggles. Just push through. Autistic me. I'm not hiding behind anything. I want to work. I've tried over and over, but it gets to a point where my body and brain just shut down. It's not normal stress, it's burnout that wipes me out for weeks. Kind of follows on partly from the last post. What's people's thoughts?
Yeah, and add on to that the stress of you have to work in order to survive.
I think you either, with a job, you just either get it or you don't. And I struggle through. I think I worked it out. I've done 30 different jobs for 47 different companies in just over 30 years, and I just go into a job, and if I just didn't feel it, I just didn't get it. And there were jobs that I had for a while, and I would just wake up one morning and think, that's it. I've done this. I don't want to do it anymore, and I need to move on.
One of the things I noticed is even if I was doing incredibly well in a position, if they swapped out my manager, the next one might not get me at all. And it was not possible to continue.
Robbie says in the text, with adaptation, he was able to work at a charity shop for 10 years and his friend's shop for 10 years. And that's quite a length of time. You know, I've never really been employed by any one group for longer than 2 years. So 10 years. Amazing.
Yes, adaptation is a big. Sorry, who wants to speak?
No, I was just going to say the civil service department I worked for 9 years, and I had the same job pretty much for 6 years. And then this particular manager came in, and I was an encyclopedia. I knew everything about what I was dealing with, the product, the business side, the technical side. There was nothing I couldn't cope with. And this manager completely sidelined me, and it was bullying, it was psychological, and it took a year to get me out. But in the end, well, they gave me £6,000 to walk away and keep my mouth shut. But I never recovered from that. My confidence was shot after that.
Adaptation is a big thing. Although I haven't had a lot of employment, but what I've noticed from my voluntary work and what work that I've done for a long time, 10, 11 years, is doing it in a way which is adaptable, but the work still gets done. I mean, they did that in Oxfam when I was the voluntary work there for a number of years. They couldn't adapt everything because there was limitations in terms of, where it was admin I did, it's where the computer was. It was in a big kind of storeroom at the back, and it was kind of busy, and, it wasn't kind of it wasn't my favourite kind of place sometimes, depending how I felt. I'd rather have a quiet office alone. I know it's asking a lot, but that's how I get things done. Although it was nice people, don't get me wrong. But also, when I was doing an internship at Strathclyde University in Glasgow, which was through a kind of Scottish Government kind of funding, the Autism Network Scotland, they adapted things in a way, like not being part of the office, which is all kind of open plan and constant noise, people talking, people on phones, people talking to each other, just noise of people working. But I was in this sort of booth just along a bit, and that sort of kind of, it felt like a cocoon. Like I could go in there and get away from, even though it was still a bit of noise, it was kind of noise it was copable with, so I can just get on with the work that I was there to do. And or even just to go somewhere to sit at the desk where it was actually somewhere to kind of recover, because I wasn't under pressure to kind of do things too fast either. Well, most of the time not. And I felt that if that was done in many jobs, that would be so good for me, because I couldn't go to a job and not do the work. And it'd feel absolutely terrible if I wasn't able to do the job that I was hired for. Because you obviously, when you're doing a job, you're getting hired, you're getting paid to do something. And if I felt I failed on that, it would actually take me, it would hit me pretty hard. And I think this has done to a lot of autistic people. There's people that claim that there's people out there that are lazy with their job and they just get through and it's all about the money. But for many autistic people, it's about the work as well, and feeling you've accomplished and achieved or completed a task. And that is for me a big deal.
Have you heard of that category, shit work, which I think designates jobs where you do absolutely nothing? They just sort of seem to fulfill box ticking. And there was an amazing story that came up during the pandemic as well about a guy who was at Portugal or Spain who'd been employed and paid by a company for something like 15 years and he'd never turned up. Nobody had checked. So there are these strange anomalies out there in the land of work.
There was a guy when I worked for the local city council who was one of the workmen repairing potholes, and he went off sick, and so the three-man team was down to two, and the productivity of the two-men team stayed exactly the same. And then when this guy came back to work, they put him with a different two-man team, so there were now three people, and the productivity didn't increase again.
That measurement in the past, did you used to call it time and motion studies?
Oh, we had all the repairs were measured by an inspector before anyone went out, so we knew which team had done which jobs and how much they'd repaired.
No wonder we feel like aliens at times. That's another world.
But taking lists of jobs and applying them, I had to take a list of jobs and then apply them against certain areas and certain roads in certain areas. And on certain days, certain grades of tarmac were used and not on other days. So the work had to be graded. The work had to be allocated to certain jobs on certain days and other days. And I quite enjoyed it. I had I got productivity up by nearly 50% when they put me on this work planning job, and then of course they got rid of me because they said I wasn't a team player.
I sometimes wonder why there aren't open job banks where when you need money you could just go along, volunteer or offer your services and get paid on a short... Well, that's basically in existence now, isn't it? The gig economy or whatever they call it, that short contract thing where you don't have any rights. But I always thought it'd be like, okay, they're needing to clean up a few properties in the council, and they need a hand, so maybe I can volunteer for a few days and get paid.
Delivering leaflets, which I think the company, I checked them out a couple of years ago, they were gone. I used to deliver the free newspaper, that's gone now. Telephone books, Thompson's directories, yellow pages, those jobs are all gone now. And they were all short term, like a week.
The next post is from Pete Warmby, autistic author. Autistic and ADHD award-winning writer and speaker on autism and autistic lived experience. And he shares the following. I'm delighted to announce that I'm going to be working closely with the organisation Anna Freud in the delivery of the new iteration of Autism Central, an NHS-funded support network packed with excellent resources for autistic people and their families. It's fully neuro-inclusive, of course, and there are some incredible people involved. I'll be making videos and blogs, consulting and providing general advice. And I went on to Autism Central's site, and they say Autism Central is for families and carers of autistic people and those who support them. Autism Central is a peer support programme co-produced with parents, carers and autistic people of all ages. We offer families education, coaching and connection through resources, one-to-one peer support and community events. From the 1st of October, Anna Freud is proud to lead the delivery of Autism Central, commissioned by NHS England. Anna Freud is a world-leading mental health charity for children and families that has developed and delivered pioneering mental health care for over 70 years. What's people's thoughts?
I was just thinking that it's not for adults and would be very useful for adults. That was mentioned in an earlier post. Also, the word pioneering. One would hope they've moved into the future more than just how this is written, like in actuality.
Yeah, I can hear a bit of scepticism there. Let's hope this is what it says it is. And if it is, let's hope that Scotland looks to it and sees what they can do to use autistic people and autistic autism professionals to produce something that fits with us up here.
Yeah, they're already sort of farming out some of their services, like your link workers and that are kind of being supplied by, local charities and religious groups and stuff like that. That's been my experience recently with NHS in Scotland. So something like this would be really good to, get some equity into the situation.
For the edit, apologies, Robbie. Go back to the previous post. Robbie says, it's not safe me volunteering now because of being punished when I have meltdowns. And that's a worrying comment. And I remember Robbie has shared this before when he has done volunteering. It's like when he's been through a hard time, he feels, or he says, he was punished for that happening. And that's not being inclusive, especially in volunteer work. The next post is from Neurodivergent Lou, who's a blogger finding a place in a neurotypical world. And Lou shares presentations, and this is one which I'll go over quite quickly. Sorry. This is a presentation that Lou has shared. And it's called 10 Phrases Autistic People Might Take Literally. Number 1, the dress code is casual. Number 2, the dishwasher needs doing. Number 3, is anyone sitting here? Number 4, read the terms and conditions. Number 5, take a seat. Number 6, I'm going for coffee. Number 7, why do you want the job? Number 8, I will be 2 minutes. Number 9, how are you? And number 10, see you later. It has explanations in each of the list that's just been shared. But how do people feel about these things? Does this sound familiar to you? Things we take literally?
I had a guy, people say, how are you? And I tell people exactly how I am. And one day a guy turned round to me and said, you're a hypochondriac. And I went absolutely crazy. I really had a go at him because I said, I've got certain problems. I have certain problems with my back at the best of times. And I said, and if you ask me how I am and I tell you my back's playing me up, that's because it is. It's not because I'm making it up.
My favourite one of it. Go on.
No, I was just want to say that people don't want you to bring them down, but, they're so casual about entertaining a conversation or even entering one with you, so, it's a big responsibility dealing with another human being.
There's also the offhand comment when someone says something to you and you turn around and say, you seem to be confusing me with someone who actually cares. Because we're back in the small talk territory again here, aren't we?
Robbie says in the text, I will sometimes say, do you want me to say what I'm supposed to say, or do you want the truth? And that is a very good point, especially when people ask you, how are you? How was your day? That sort of thing.
Can I ask both Robbie and GR, when you say these things to people, do they punch you in the face? Because if somebody says that back to me, that feels to me like an insult. It feels arrogant and rude. And I think possibly it's possible to misread how aggressive that might come across to somebody else.
I think
I've
it was...
usually,
Go on, Robbie.
I've usually already fallen out with the person. I've not yet been hit.
The you seem to be confusing me with someone is a really old line that was generally used around anyway, and I had a reputation for being... Some people considered me rude and single-minded, but I'm going back to this job I had where I just knew everything about the job. I just, if anyone asked me a question, and if someone said something, and like we had a new manager come in one time, and that was an experience. And every time she said something, I just said, no, you can't do that because of this, because of that, because of this. And there was a time, it was when I worked at the Coast Guard agency, and I'd done something I'd frozen the pane on a spreadsheet, and in a meeting with the senior manager, she said, "Oh, the spreadsheet's been corrupted. We can't get any information out of it, and we'll have to start from scratch." And I said, "Well, no, I've just frozen the panes." And she kept saying, "Oh no, it's ruined, it's ruined." I said, "No, I've frozen the panes. I'll unfreeze them as soon as the meeting's over." "Oh, but you can't do that." And in the end, I just turned around and said, I'm absolutely shocked that a senior manager doesn't understand the basics of spreadsheets." And the whole meeting went quiet. And the next morning I was called in by the manager in the middle of us. And he said he was giving me a verbal warning because of the way I'd spoken to her. And I turned around and said, "How long would it take you to replace me?" And I'm gone. And it was simple as that.
Well, I'm autistic, and I also have had employees during my time. And I would be looking to fire you as soon as possible in that circumstance.
I was there 7 weeks. I was supposed to be there 6 months, and I had put my notice in, and then they got rid of me anyway because they'd advertised a job up the corridor, and someone from outside had got it, and the person who was doing that job was a permanent member of staff, so they had to kick out the first temporary person, the last person to come in on a temporary contact, to get rid of me. But I wasn't going through... I'm not like that, but I hated every second of being there, really. And I'm not going into it anymore.
Oh, I get it. So essentially, you were saying to your employer, a big fuck you, because you're out of there anyway, and you'd had enough of them.
Well, they hadn't done that yet.
Sorry, I'm feeling a lot of what GR says here, because there's a sense of empowerment that creeps in when you're being a bit of, just someone's employee for a while. And there's this thing in autism about, you're either avoiding or you're fawning, but somehow you have to assert some sense of empowerment at some point, and it can come out radically in the most inopportune and inappropriate ways sometimes.
This particular manager, she was a bully, simply put. There was a manager and 3 of us in this team. Both the other 2 who were at my administrative level both said that she was a bully, and I used to watch her go up to people and she'd say, "Are you busy?" And if they'd say, "Well, I'm so busy, I've got all this and this to do," and she'd say, "Well, I need you to do this." And she only tried to do it to me once. It was sending out Christmas cards, believe it or not. And I just shut everything down, and I was getting up to go and get my coat, and she rushes over and she says, "Oh, I've got these Christmas cards and they're urgent and they need to go out, so you need to stay and make sure they're ready to go out." And I turned to her and said, "My bus goes in 10 minutes. Today's mail has already gone. First mail tomorrow is not till 9:10. I will be in at 7:30 tomorrow morning and I will do it then." And I walked out. But she was a terrible bully and she was acknowledged for it. One of the guys there, this is the Coast Guard agency, and everyone else in that team, in that room, they were all captains and admirals, believe it or not. And one of the guys there one morning, who was a captain, said to me, "How can you stand working with that fucking bitch?" So even he didn't think much of it. He was a captain in the Royal Navy.
Thanks everyone for the discussion tonight, and thanks for the people that have shared the posts. Really enjoyed tonight and really enjoyed sharing and hearing our experiences. That is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 23rd of November 2025, which is here through Spectrum Voices Conversation every Sunday 5:55 PM to 7 PM UK time. I look forward to speaking next time. Now I'll hand over to Jules.
I don't think it's necessary. You're probably not going to do a second introduction, are you, Harry? You're going to make that into one podcast, just shorten it, yeah?
Yeah, it depends on the time, but yeah, I'll try and do that.
Okay, if you want to, I'll just record it in case you use it. Just before we join Harry for the second part of Spectrum Voices, the 555, Harry's Facebook, let's remember our sponsor, coldpack.co.uk. If you're a practitioner who uses cryotherapy, Coldpack prints your details, your logo, on the cold pack for your patients to remember you by. If you're the patient, using coldpack.co.uk means that everything that you spend on that site is a donation to us here at Autistic Radio and Autistic Association. What's in part 2, Harry?